Today's topic is all about the intersection of AI and Web3. Kyle, what do you think about this show?
I was excited for this one and I walked away with it just kind of mind blown, which I honestly thought was going to happen. But man, this was cool. So we first defined Web3 and AI. So we're trying to make this for if you know nothing about AI, or even if you don't know much about Web3, we're trying to make it an easy thing to understand here. So that was the beginning. Then we dove into some use cases for AI. But more interestingly, we posed the question of, does AI need Web3 or vice versa? Does Web3 need AI to actually work? And this brought on a very, very interesting conversation. The summary of that being, well, they don't necessarily need each other. We talk about why they actually amplify each other, and to a level that I honestly did not think of coming into this conversation. And then we just talked about the game that the guests we had on the show built, which is called AI Arena, which is basically a game that teaches AI to players by training and battling these fighters using AI. And those fighters are actual NFTs. And I'm not going to get into too much about it, but I'm not a gamer. Don't really care too much about games. I did when I was younger. But this game was actually mind-blowing. When we learned what it was, I was like, oh my God, this is where AI is going in Web3. I was like, this is insane. So this was a cool one. I'm pretty stoked about it.
Yeah, stick around to the end to hear Kyle and I talk trash to each other of how we're going to go live on Twitch and play this game. But joining us today to discuss this is Brandon and Michael from AI Arena. Brandon is the CEO and co-founder of AI Arena. And prior to starting AI Arena, Brandon led machine learning and research development at a multi-billion-dollar fund. He actually built an AI model which manages $1 billion of assets. To this day, it's still going, even though he's not working there anymore. And so really, Brandon is, I think, one of the top developers in the AI space globally. And then Michael is part of the business team of AI Arena. Apparently, he has one of the best gamers in the game, Beast Mode. He'll tell us a little bit about that. He also comes from a hedge fund background where he focused on asset management and trading. So both of these guys, really deep understanding of both the AI space, but also the Web3 space, because AI Arena uses AI, but also gives you on-chain ownership by using NFTs. And we're going to talk about how that works together in this episode. I'm just so fired up for everybody to listen to this. It was just an absolute banger. Before we jump into the show, though, let's just take a minute to hear from our sponsors.
The future of social media is here, and that future lives in Web3 on top of Lens Protocol. Web2 social platforms are broken and ripe for disruption. You see, the epicenter of social media is the creators, and yet they are the most neglected. Web2 platforms like Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram are all essentially robbing creators of their worth. Creators are a new type of entrepreneur, forming new types of businesses. Yet with Web2 platforms, creators don't own their content or their profiles, and that's their product and business. Instead, they are tied to the platforms they choose to create on. Well, just like how crypto is freeing us from banks, Web3 is freeing us from these centralized platforms. On Lens Protocol, creators own their content, own their profile, and even their social graph and followers in the form of NFTs. This allows you to move freely from one social application to another with your content, profile, and followers moving along with you. Lens Protocol enables self-sovereignty for your social graph and interoperability across the internet. At Web3 Academy, we believe this is the future of social, and that's why we've partnered with Lens to ensure that the path of social media is heading in the right direction. Visit lens.xyz to learn more today.
Unlock Protocol is the NFT membership protocol for Web3. Content subscriptions, community access, event tickets are all forms of memberships, one of the most common business models for creators and entrepreneurs today. Building an NFT membership opens many new possibilities for your members. Everything from tailored multi-platform experiences to the ability to sell an unfinished subscription on secondary markets. These are things just not possible in Web 2. However, in order for this business model to work, creators need NFTs, which are time-bound or have built-in recurring payments. Unlock Protocol does this for your NFTs. Better yet, with a few simple steps, you can create your own NFT contract without code. What WordPress has done for websites, Unlock Protocol is doing for membership NFTs. If you're an NFT creator, you can't rely on royalties as they are likely going to zero. You need recurring revenue. You need Unlock. At Web3 Academy, we believe NFT memberships are the future of business and community. And that's why we decided to build on Unlock. Learn more at unlock-protocol.com. Today, we are talking about AI and Web3 with two of the bosses in the space, two of the leaders in the space, Brandon and Michael from AI Arena. So stoked to have you guys both on the show. Welcome to the show, guys. How you doing today?
Great. Pumped to be here, man.
Thanks so much for having us.
Another fully Canadian show, is it, Jay?
That's right. That's right. We should have a tally on that.
Yeah. Let me set the ground for this episode. First of all, Jay and I know basically nothing about AI. We're kind of just catching wind of it all like everyone else is right now because it's all over Twitter. But I want to just give a quick little definition of Web3, of AI, and then we're going to dive into talking to Brandon and Michael about kind of why they or how they're going to work together and why they need each other or if they need each other, and just probably blow all of our minds on what this stuff is. So Web3, I think we all know what this is, but let's do a quick review anyway from a tech side of things. So Web3 is a new tech infrastructure that enables digital ownership and interoperability across the internet, right? So it's a tech layer that makes the way we use the internet more similar to the physical world. And I mean that in terms of custodying our own goods, the freedom to move around with those things and those goods from one location to another. Now we can do that on the internet, right? And then we have AI, artificial intelligence. It's a new tech as well that brings logic to data, is kind of the best way that I think of it. So it's a tech layer that sort of makes robots and machines more similar to humans, right? In the sense that machines can perceive, synthesize, and infer information, right? So that's the kind of way that I think about it. It's two technologies, probably two of the fastest growing technologies maybe ever, happening at like the exact same time. And I think we're starting to see them integrate and combine and come together. Some people call this the exponential age, which I absolutely love. But anyway, let's start here with Brandon. What are your thoughts on those definitions? Would you add anything to that, or does that give a good sort of explanation of the two?
I think that gives a good explanation. On the blockchain side, definitely you guys got that. On the AI side, the only thing I would add is that you can think of AI as being split up into two subsets, with one of them focused on expert systems and the other one focused on machine learning. And so most of the big amazing things you see in the news about AI is actually with respect to machine learning. Expert systems is basically like you get a bunch of experts in a room and they code up a bunch of if statements and then it'll basically do things according to that logic. Machine learning, on the other hand, doesn't have any a priori knowledge, right? It's a blank slate and it learns through data. So you feed in data, and then there are various architectures and learning algorithms that you can use in order to basically learn something and perform inference later on. And so most of the models that you see, like these large language models, or some of these systems that are playing like AlphaGo, for example, these are using machine learning because you feed in a lot of data, they learn some stuff, and then they know how to do some stuff. So I would say that's the main difference.
How long have we been using AI for? I mean, blockchain is still maybe 12 years, 13 years in total. Web3, like just a few, at least the term Web3. How far along are we on the AI journey? Any idea?
I think this will depend on which definition or which subset you're referring to. So expert systems have been used for a long time. Deep Blue that faced Gary Kasparov in chess from a while back, that was an expert system. The more recent advances are using machine learning. And so I would say machine learning isn't so far along, although people have been writing about machine learning for decades. But it was only recently, within the past 10-ish years, that we've started getting enough compute to make a lot of these systems viable, right? Because they need a lot of data. And if you look at some of the more recent models, there are these massive models with billions and billions of parameters, and you just couldn't train that a few decades ago.
Is that why we're seeing this AI moment right now? Because the hardware is catching up, and then we've had basically a decade of stuff happening in the background, and now why is the moment happening now?
I think there have been a series of moments over sort of like the past 10 years. I think it started with image recognition. That was a very big moment with convolutional neural networks, where it was learning to basically tell the difference between various images to a very, very high level and actually surpass like human level, right? That was like a big breakthrough. And then after that, we've just had a sequence of different breakthroughs in deep reinforcement learning. And now it's large language models. More recently, I guess before the whole chat GPT thing, it was these DALL-E, Midjourney, these generative art models. But yeah, I would say a lot of it's just, we have so much data now. We have the compute to be able to actually process and learn from this data. And so, yeah, I think the next 10 years, I even try thinking in 10 years what it's going to be like, and I can't even imagine it. It's going to be absolutely insane.
What's going to grow faster? Is it going to be AI or is it going to be Web3? What's going to get
Ooh,
adoption faster?
That's good
that is a
question.
great question. Honestly, I'm not too sure. I hope it's Web3 because I really do believe
Mm.
in decentralization and essentially putting the power into the hands of the people. And AI, I feel like it can go either way, right? It can be really good or really bad.
Which one has more developers working on it right now?
Ooh.
Like we think that there's
Oh,
about 10,000 developers in Web3 is a rough estimate. How many developers do you think are working on AI?
I don't know, but if I am a betting man, I would bet a lot more a lot more working on AI.
Interesting. I want to get into the intersection of the two, but I actually feel like diving deeper into this AI conversation is going to be very useful here. Can
Sure.
you just give us maybe some high level ideas of what AI is going to do for the average human? And whether that's like the average business, the average person, like other than, I mean, Chat GPT has been super cool. I'm sure most people have
Mm,
played around with it by now. I think it had 1 million users within 5 days. So, okay, it's going to
yeah.
be the smarter Google essentially. You can ask it anything and talk to it. It's crazy. But there's probably so much more. What else does AI do that we're not really thinking about?
You can use it for anything. We use it internally for a lot of things just to be more efficient. So, for example, there are tedious things in developing a game. And it was taking me on average like 2 hours to do one of these things. And I had to do it over and over and over again. So I'm like, you know what? Let me make a machine learning algorithm to do it. I'll show it how to do it a few times. It learns how to do it. Now, literally, what I do is I just drag and drop the model. It takes half a second and it's done.
You're
It's
not
just
going to
like
have a
these.
job anymore, Brandon.
I know. My model's taking over my job. AI will just make so many things so much more efficient.
Obviously, there's a big example of your background. Maybe you can speak just briefly to this. I don't want to dive too deep into the financial side because we don't talk a
Sure.
ton about that on the show.
Yeah.
But can you just speak a little bit on the financial side, how AI is really supporting what's happening there?
If you think about just the markets and trading, there is so much information available to you. It's almost like you don't know what to pay attention to. And that's where machine learning algorithms are really great because you're able to take in all this information and find all these patterns and be able to deduce what is the important information. I don't want to get too far into this, but it's a lot more complicated than what I just said because there's this concept of overfitting, which means you learn basically relationships that only hold in the data that you're looking at and don't hold going forward. But the bottom line is that we have all this information. Humans often don't know where to look and what's important and what will be relevant to your decision making. And so it's great to train machine learning algorithms to be able to do this for you since they can ingest data way faster than any human can.
It seems to me that AI is going to make it into every single industry in every single sector, and it's going to replace or amplify what we do as humans, right?
Hmm.
I don't think it's going to replace everything, but like you said, you have tasks that you have to do all the time. There's other things you have to do, and you can just get AI to do that for you and probably do it faster and better. And you can focus on something else, right? Which is pretty amazing. But you also mentioned there's potential for it to go bad. And especially if we continue down this centralized route, if someone owns an algorithm that's taking over everything, this could be problematic. So my question to you is, does AI need Web3 to succeed, or vice versa? Does Web3 need AI to succeed?
I'll use a different word than succeed. Maybe like we have to think about different outcomes, right? Because I'm sure some centralized authority that manages these massive models and they basically control the world would think that they're succeeding when the rest of the world is not too happy about it, right? I think what Web3 enables is the decentralization and democratization of these AI models. So it was actually one interesting use case. I don't know if many people even internally know this, but one of the things that I wanted to test out was actually an AI model as a public good that lives on the blockchain. And so every time you interact with it, it gets better. And specifically, I was going to implement something like a smart routing algorithm to route to different decentralized exchanges to be able to kind of minimize slippage and trading fees and stuff like that. And you can imagine that every time you route a trade through there, it's accumulating this data and it's basically getting smarter each time. And it's this thing that anyone can interact with and it doesn't belong to anybody. It just lives in the smart contract and it'll kind of serve the public good. And I think that's like super cool versus you can imagine some bank like owning this and they're going to charge a spread on this and they're going to basically monopolize this. And so I think it'd be really cool if people start developing these smart contracts with these intelligent beings like living in there to kind of like help out the public in various different like areas. I think that'd be super cool.
And just one extra thing, the if you think about code, it can be copy and pasted, right? And so if you want to transfer code to somebody else, if I'm selling you a model that maybe helps your business run more efficiently or that you demand, how do you know that I'm not selling it to somebody else and copying and pasting it? How do you know that that I worked on this model myself in the first place and I didn't just steal it? How do you know the history of the training? This can all be wrapped and containerized in the Web3 layer, and it enables the transaction of intellectual property, which is right now technologically impossible without having a centralized intermediary, or if you really trust me,
Interesting. So, okay, you're talking wrapping AI and basically tracking who's going to use this code or who's going to use this model or this algorithm, or it could also be a means of selling it. So there's AI in terms of trading, which I think we've all heard of that, the algos that are going to trade, and that's been around for a long time. But the way that you're talking about using Web3 and how that's going to intersect is actually like wrapping your code or wrapping that AI model in an NFT or something, and that's how you're going to use this as like as a way to track it or sell it or do whatever you want with it. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. And there's, once you build out the infrastructure on that, which is what we're trying to do, it's really from there, who knows what people are going to spur up, how they're going to interact, how they're going to coordinate behavior through the incentives that the protocol arrives to. It's just something that it literally cannot be done in Web 2 yet, right? And so that's something that it's just that it needs, if you want the permissionless exchange of AI code and models and whatnot. It just makes it more efficient.
And I guess it connects to Brandon's point about the public good. Is so many developers, and look, I'm not a developer, so correct me if I'm wrong, but so many developers seem, especially in new technological evolution phases, like the beginning of the internet, there's such a sharing of code, right? And there's a desire to build off of each other. But in the past, that was just shared online. Anybody could do whatever they want with it. You can't track how anybody's using it in the future. There's no ability to connect it to property, basically. And property might be a strong word, but whereas now you can use a smart contract to essentially wrap it, control is not the right word, but allow it to create further life while you can also see where it goes from there. Is that sort of what you're getting at?
Absolutely. And Brandon, I know, definitely has thoughts on this and personal experiences of why that's so important, not just to machine learning, like AI creators, which we believe are creators and should be able to monetize themselves just without relying on a working somewhere or a centralized intermediary yet.
Interesting. Brandon, what other ways does Web3 and AI interact or come together? Is there other examples or other things where we use AI to better what we're doing over in Web3, or vice versa, where we need to use Web3 and the technology there to better what we're doing on AI? Is there any other examples that you can share?
I love the aspect that you can monetize what you make. So if I make a really, really cool model and I think it provides value to people, I can then basically either sell it to them, or we can set up some agreement. Maybe we have an NFT that has a licensing right to use this model. We can do that. Another super cool thing, it doesn't necessarily even have to live on the blockchain, but it uses a lot of technology that we use in Web3, which is zero knowledge proofs. So for example, let's say I own this model and I want people to use it. But let's say you're skeptical that I'm actually using the model correctly. I can provide a proof that I'm performing inference correctly without having to reveal what the model is. Because let's say I think the model is valuable, right? I don't necessarily want to give it out to people, but I can provide these zero knowledge proofs so that everyone that's using it is comfortable. And this is, again, I don't mean to go back to the trading example, but this is like insanely important for trading, because there's a lot of times when investment managers will be telling you they're doing something when they're actually not. And we actually, back at the fund, we used to actually invest in hedge funds and we used to invest in quant funds. And a lot of time we left the meeting like, I don't think they're doing what they're saying they're doing. And there's no way to prove it because we asked them and they're like, oh, sorry, it's proprietary. We can't share this. Right. And so now if they're like, okay, I have this machine learning algorithm, right? We'll say, okay, every time you make a trade, I want you to send me a zero knowledge proof that the model is actually telling you to do that. Right?
Interesting.
And so actually, when I came up with this idea, that was the the first use case, because obviously I was building trading algorithms using machine learning. I was like, oh, like this would be super cool. We tokenize the model, we can encrypt it so that no one else can see it, but you have proper ownership of it. And then we use ZK proofs to prove that you're actually doing things correctly. It's shifted a little since then because we care a lot about mass adoption and democratizing AI. But yeah, that's something that's always passionate to me.
Interesting. I want to add one more example that I was actually reading a thread on that was just mind blowing to me. And if we think of a future where, right now we have humans working with other humans, well, we're about to have, well, we already do if you're using ChatGPT, where you have basically a machine or a robot kind of working with a human. Well, eventually we're going to have machines working with machines, and humans are actually just out of the picture. I think of like Teslas moving around and maybe going and getting like their power, and it's done without humans, and they need to pay for that power. Well, machines are going to need to pay for each other for the tasks, the things that they're doing. And maybe they can do it with fiat rails. Probably not. I don't think a machine's going to hand cash over to another machine, but it can do it on crypto rails, right? Because it's programmable. There is no intermediary. You don't have to trust anything. And so it seems to me that it makes sense that when machines start working together and there's value that needs to be exchanged, crypto rails seem to make the most sense for that as well. So that's and also another really cool example. I don't know if you have any extra thoughts on that, but I really enjoyed that thread as well.
No, definitely. I think that's absolutely correct. I think honestly, my default, whenever value has to be transferred, whether it's locally or globally, but especially globally, I don't trust traditional financial rails anymore. Crypto rails is the way to go.
All right, let's transfer into the conversation around the story of AI Arena. Kai, unless you wanted to, anything else on high level AI?
No, I think it's perfect to go into it, because really what you guys have done is taken Web3, taken AI and packaged it into a game. And so it's the perfect combination. So let's go down that hole for sure.
Yes. So Brandon, you obviously have had a very successful career. You've probably could have done a lot of things. Why did you decide to combine both AI and Web3, and how did you come up with the idea for AI Arena?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So back at the fund, we also used to do some research into any of the digital assets. So Wei, one of my co-founders, he used to lead the public markets investing, and one of his mandates was to invest in digital assets. And so he had me look into NFTs. This was like mid 2020, and I had looked into NFTs in like the 2017 era, but I hadn't really gotten into them. And so whenever I get into something, I like basically looking at the source code and really coding it up from scratch for myself. And so I started looking at NFTs, and I realized, I was like, holy shit, like these things are just containers for anything that's unique and has value. And I remember I went away and I was like, yo, the thing that I make that's unique and has value is my machine learning models. What if I tokenize them? And then I was like, that can solve so many problems. It can solve this ownership problem where I can finally stop people stealing my shit. And it can solve and it can solve the other problem that I constantly saw in the industry. I saw this theme emerging in the machine learning space where there was a heavy reliance on credentialization. And I saw very talented people have to settle for jobs that they were overqualified for, in my opinion, because they had taken the time to self-learn machine learning, and they were really good actually. And they can actually apply machine learning very well, but they didn't have a PhD or a master's in machine learning. And so they had to settle for a job that really they didn't want because no one else would take their resume essentially. And so I realized that they can actually make a model, they can tokenize it, and if it truly is valuable, i.e. they are actually good at what they're doing, then they can actually make money. And this should be a viable path for them. And then if you layer on top of that, the fact that you can actually compete with these models. And this was actually before the whole play to earn like thing went wild. I actually took inspiration from a project called Numerai, which is a machine learning competition to predict like financial markets. And you can actually earn their NMR tokens. And I was like, oh, that would be also really cool, is that these tokenized things that are living on the blockchain, not only can they sell them, but they can train them and then compete against other people that are training these AIs as well. And then we can basically reward them in tokens, which you definitely couldn't do in Web 2, especially if we wanted a global competition, which our thesis is that talent is distributed globally. And especially there's a lot of pockets in the world where the inequality is even larger, where these people are like so good at this stuff, but there is no jobs there. And as we started building out AI Arena, we actually realize that this definitely is the case, and we got confirmation in this because people are joining our community from all over the world, from Africa, Southeast Asia, and they're telling us, they're like, one guy was even like, I have a PhD machine learning, but there's no jobs where I live. And it's just like blowing our mind. And so, yeah, we wanted to build this to give an opportunity to people to monetize doing what they actually love.
That's amazing. The reason that you started this comes from such wholesome roots. It's no wonder you want to spend your time making public goods. You're a good human. Thank you for that. We need more people like you.
No worries.
Let's explain AI Arena to the audience so they understand, because we're talking about it now. So can one of you break down the game and how it works?
The game itself, so visually very similar to Smash Bros, right? And that's probably where the difference ends. So it's player versus player. It's a player versus player battle fighting game, right? With the exception that each character that's battling it's intelligent. It's an NFT, right? And it evolves and it trains, and you train it, and then it fights autonomously. So it's super unique. First of all, the experience of training and raising an AI, once you get it out to the box, it doesn't know how to do anything. It's literally a dummy, right? And you're sort of injecting basic training into it. And the training part is fun. You actually have to play the game to train it, right? And it picks up on your tendencies. It learns the skills you put into it, right? Eventually, then you can go into what's called the AI inspector, which Brandon will definitely speak to, which is like looking into the brain of the AI, right? And now you're looking at how does it react in certain situations. That's where you can fine tune it and implement strategies into it, right? So the reason why we're extremely different. First of all, there's this aspect of it's almost like you're raising a child, right? The closest thing
I was just gonna say,
yeah, you have an identity. You feel like you're attached to it because it's picking up on your tendencies. It's fighting how you want it to fight. Then it's on chain. You own it. So that's one way it's different. Second of all, there's the aspect that you actually need to play to fight. So a lot of criticism on simulation games is that, okay, it's like Football Manager, whatnot. It's fun, but I don't get to play it, right? And at a certain point, you want to play something else, you play. No, to train this, you have the better you are at fighting games, you're involved, right? So that part, if you like playing games, you'll be satisfied. So that's a second game loop. And then the third and final game loop is once you've trained it up, once you feel that it's competitive, right? Once it's beating you up, you're trying to beat it and it's beating you up. You're like, all right, can't do much more. You let it fight autonomously. Evergreen competition. It's ranked, right? It's a ranked leaderboard. That element of it fighting autonomously creates what we call, we have a saying, the dopamine hits different, right? Because all game loops it's a dopamine rush, it's a dopamine hit. And neuroscience papers have proved this. When you are not in control of a certain event, right? But you have some input into it. When you reward or fail, it's a way bigger swing in the experience that you feel. The analogy can be like professional athletes or the parents of professional athletes, or the parents of somebody, that's writing an exam, a kid that's writing an exam. The parents sometimes are more nervous than the actual pupil because the pupil's in control, the pupil's thinking about other things, they're maybe involved, there might be distracted, but the parent that's not in control is almost like waiting. And that's the feeling of watching your AI, because you have a hand in it, right? But also at a certain point, you let it deploy and simulate. We know that this game loop is exciting based off our alpha tests. Like we've had people saying they were literally screaming like at their computer because the AI did something that they did or did not expect it to do. Those like alpha go moments, that like move 42 when the world's best alpha go player was just completely bamboozled by a crazy move from the AI. Like you see a lot of that, right? And most games make their entire living off getting one of those game loops really right. We're elegantly combining all three, and we're not forcing it. It just happens to come about, elegantly combining all three like insane game loop rushes, that it's never been out there before.
You've literally leveraged the game loops of parenting. Right. Yeah. It's actually mind blowing right now. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Except for this is in fighting, of course. But I'm wondering, is there a V2 coming out where you actually just raise a kid and you practice being a parent and you end up seeing the results of the kid? Oh man, my mind's blown.
Man, every parent should have to take that course before having a kid. Right. That would be so good for the world.
I like that. We promise there's no diapers in this game. But yeah, if we go even further, why is this more than just a game? We spoke about at the beginning. At the end of the day, we're really tokenizing AI, right? And this is and we're creating the rails for this to happen. And just how we're abstracting AI into a visual fight, we take the same infrastructure and abstract basically whatever else there's demand for this type of, interaction, right? And given the role, given how big of a role AI already plays in our life and arguably will, this is something that we could see penetrating like all corners of the market or the economy.
So
Eventually.
what's the level of skill in terms of, I don't mean gaming skill, I mean AI skill necessary in order to get involved? Like, could Kyle and I, who have absolutely no coding background, come in and make fighters, and they probably would suck and get murdered by absolutely everybody in the game because we're not developers. But I know that your focus is education, which I love. I love that you're coming at this from you're basically using gaming, which is fun, to educate people on a complex topics such as AI. I'm just curious, at what level is the most of your users at?
So a lot of our users actually don't have AI experience. And what we found is that having AI experience, it does help in certain aspects, but it doesn't give you an outright advantage. In fact, our top 5 finishers of the last few beta tests that we've ran have not been AI people. And that's one of the amazing things that we found. And it was probably one of the most proud moments of my life was in the first beta, someone that had no AI experience was playing our game. And on day 2 of the beta, they were educating other people about AI. And they were like, it's sophisticated topics too, about like how to properly collect data to ensure that your data set is balanced so you don't have a skewed policy. And we were just looking at each other like, whoa, this is, because people were subconsciously learning about machine learning by playing a fun game, a fun and intuitive game. So, and they didn't have any prior experience. And what we found is that when people are engaged in playing this game, they will just dedicate more time and they'll ramp up on the learning curve like so fast.
Right.
And yeah, you don't have to have any AI experience to play.
And just one thing to add, and I probably should have started with this. There's really 2 games and 2 competitions. The one I just described is the game, just the regular game, the no code version, right? And this is the games that Kyle, Jay, you guys can just pick up, play with a joystick, keyboard, train your AI, literally need to know nothing about AI. Then there's the researcher competition. The way we compare this to is like Formula 1. There's a driver competition, and then there's the constructors, the cars, right? So the gamers are like the drivers. They're given an NFT, and then they have to maximize the crap out of it, just like a driver maximizes the crap out of his Mercedes or his Ferrari in F1. Eventually, right, we're gonna introduce this researcher competition, where this one is gonna be coded, and this is we're gonna attract AI talent, AI researchers to code the car or the NFT, and this is gonna be like the constructors, right? Now, let's wrap it all together. We've just created almost a marketplace for AI where you have demand from the gamers. The gamers demand the vehicles, the NFTs to fight. And then you have natural supply coming in from the researcher. They'll tune the parameters, the code version, and try and make the best fighter and supply it onto the market for gamers to play, right? And that really happened really organically. And so, yeah, there's the code version and the no code version, because that's really important.
So in the no code version, if I'm just sitting there button mashing because that's my entire gaming ability, then I can still actually make a good fighter, maybe.
Maybe.
Yeah. Or you can make a fighter that does the mashing of buttons. I don't know if that's a good fighter, but yeah, a good fighter will do that.
It'll probably beat yours, Brandon.
Well, there you go.
Okay, so we're using Web3 and NFTs to tokenize AI models. And this is outside of the game, but I guess this is sort of what you're doing in the game. You're teaching people that they can do this. Now, do you see other examples of this happening within AI, or other people using smart contracts to tokenize their AI models? Or how do we see this progressing?
I think there is a few projects that are trying to apply AI on blockchain. Now, I don't want to talk too much about them because I truthfully don't know too much about them because they don't put much out in the public. But what I will say is I would say not all AI projects are made equally. So remember in the beginning of this, I talked about this segregation in AI of expert systems and machine learning. What I'll tell you, like I'm pretty confident in this, is that most of these people are implementing expert systems and they're disguising it as something more sophisticated. And the reason why I know this, one is like a lot of their documentation is very vague, but also remember that I used to invest in quant hedge funds. And so as soon as machine learning started getting popular in quant, everyone would rebrand themselves as an AI fund. Literally everyone. We know they weren't doing AI, but they would say that they're doing AI just in order to get more money through the door. And so I would say to the audience that expect that this is going to come, that everyone's going to be rebranding as an AI crypto company. And just do a little bit of due diligence to make sure that they're actually doing what they say that they're doing. With that said, even if they were doing like the more sophisticated stuff, I would say that no one's coming even close to doing what we're doing. And it was going back to what Michael said, in terms of we focus a lot on the human aspect and integrating human in the loop. And so it's not really as much fun to kind of click a button and it just does everything for you, right? And you're not kind of in the loop and participating and giving feedback to your AI. So I would say no one's really at that level. I would love to see more competition. I'm an insanely competitive guy. Maybe it'll make us like go even further. But at the moment, there isn't really anyone else doing that in the space.
Yeah, and just to maybe to expand on that, the closed systems, a lot of stuff you see branded on AI is just if statements, and it's very closed. Like every game you've seen up until now, it's the developer has given you the ceiling. They've programmed what's possible and what's not, right? It's just very parameterized if statements. It's important to note when you have true AI, like we do in our tech stacks, it's really evergreen. It's infinite. There's no bounds. The AI can learn from itself, and it just reaches a certain point where in traditional games, the closed system, as Brandon, you have to code every possible real, right? And just be mindful of that when you see, people branded as AI, whether it's just linear regression or it's true AI.
To kind of piggyback on Jay's question there as well, where do you guys see this going? You guys have created this awesome game, and I'm sure you're going to focus on that for a while. I'm sure it's going to take a long time to build this game out to wherever it's going to go. And it's focused on fighting, right? And kind of teaching AI as well. But I feel like we already came up with the parenting idea. There's got to be so many applications here with this idea to train AI and then set it out into the world and see what it does. There's more than just competition, I feel like. I actually was watching a thing on AI last week, and they were talking about AI revolutionizing education, like school. And I think they were using these AI education lessons, I guess, or modules in, I forget which countries it was, but to teach English. And it could teach English faster than when we learn English in the first however many grades. It was cutting it in half or something ridiculous. It was really, really cool. So there's so many applications to where AI can go. I'm curious if you guys in your team meetings or whatever have thought of like what's next after AI arena outside of just fighting. Is there more things that you guys are thinking about?
That's an excellent question. I mean, my answer is going to be biased to what I care about. Right. So a lot of my research is in something that's called reinforcement learning. So basically learning how to act in an environment through some reward mechanism. And so a lot of people that train sort of like, it's called continuous control. In the fighting game, for example, you can use reinforcement learning to that. And so you can kind of reframe almost any problem as a reinforcement learning problem, because everything you can think of as having a reward. I'll take a step back here for a second. So like when you're a kid growing up, if you touch like a stovetop that's hot, and you get burned, that's like a big negative reward. And so you know not to do that again. Right. Or if you do something and you get like a Kit Kat, for example, you're like, oh, that's awesome. I'm gonna do that again to get it. Right. And so that's the whole reinforcement learning. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really cool, there already is a lot of insanely cool research in reinforcement learning that have done phenomenal things at playing games. But I think this is going to extend to the real world and just being able to train robots basically how to interact. And so I think Tesla's working on this like humanoid robot to basically act as your assistant. Right. And so I think that's coming.
Okay, but it sounds like, so right now we're in the phase of we are training the AI to learn. Okay. I got a feeling we're going to get to a point where the AI and the robots are going to be training the humans to learn, right?
Yeah.
Is that where we're going to go with this? Because that's great.
I'm almost certain we are, because like just ChatGPT is like an excellent example of this.
True.
Like we go to it for help honest to God, like we're stuck on a coding question. We're like, yo, chat GPT, like
Right.
how do you solve this? And it starts telling us. And so I definitely see people going to these systems to teach them. For example, like you mentioned with the English example, let's say I want to learn Mandarin and I want an efficient way to learn Mandarin. Give me a syllabus. You know what I mean? And then it'll print out this thing and say, okay, start by learning this, this, and this. I'm sure with all the information available to these models on the internet that it can condense it down and find the most efficient way to learn something. So I'm super pumped about that because you can ingest more data more efficiently, you know?
Absolutely. Makes sense.
And I think what's so cool is if you use the education example, there's a great example of how AI and Web3 can work together. AI can provide the ability to teach, to give you the data you need, to allow you to improve, to give you reinforcement learning. And then Web3 can give you the verifiable credential that says that you did achieve this type of learning and it's trustlessly on chain. And now you can get a better job because of that, or you can prove to somebody that you actually have this skill because of that all around the world, not just by calling up your university and asking them to print your diploma, right? The other thing I think about is like supply chain management, right? Like obviously AI has huge potential in supply chain management, but then Web3, also a key part of that, ensures that whatever is happening on the supply chain is verifiable and can prove ownership of these goods as they move, and then can be interoperable if they're moving across platforms. I think we could almost break down every single industry and show how AI and Web3 work together. And I think that that's why really understanding that the different layers that they provide are so key to like the innovation that's coming, right? And that, as I think you said, Brandon, I don't know if you said this on the show or if you said this before we started recording, but they don't necessarily need each other. But when they do work together, they really do complement each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And like when I said that, I'm coming at it from the perspective, you don't need this. For example, you can argue like back in the day, you don't need light. You know what I mean?
Right.
It
You can get by.
helps. Yeah, you can get by, but it's definitely much, much better. So yeah, like you don't necessarily need Web3 for a lot of this stuff, but it makes it way more efficient. And so yeah, why not?
Right.
And I think sorry, Kyle, sorry to cut you off. I think the possibilities are just as endless as, you know, they were thinking about the internet like in the 90s, right? There's this technology, maybe the hardware hasn't caught up, but how is somebody in the 90s going to predict, you know, I think we spoke about this, apps like Uber, Airbnb, which are enabled by the internet, enable completely different business models, the transfer of services, and it's just not possible without. Nobody in the 90s could foresee that, right? That what that technology could enable down the line. And I think very similarly, Web3 and AI and their merging are going to enable business models that in hindsight might look obvious, but for now seem impossible. And it all starts with firstly creating the infrastructure for it. Helps if it's an open system and they can feed off each other. Web3 definitely, like Brandon said, it doesn't need AI, but certainly helps that cause.
Absolutely. Let's go back to AI Rita for a second here. I'm curious if you can just kind of give us a lay the ground of like, how far along are you guys in terms of, is this thing fully live? Do we have a bunch of users? Is it growing fast? Is it like, where are we at there? And then what's next for you guys? What's phase? I don't know what phase you're on right now, but what's the next phase, I guess?
Yeah, for sure. I can talk a little bit about this, and then Michael, feel free to supplement this. But we're actually launching our beta on Monday, or I don't know when this is going to go live, but
this goes live on Wednesday. So
okay,
It will have just
cool.
launched.
It'll just launch. So yeah, we're doing that. So initially we ran sort of betas on the previous version of the game, which is a much more simplified version, mostly a proof of concept. And then we realized we had to kind of go dark. We went dark for 7 months or something like that, and just completely rebuild it, step it up a notch. And yeah, this is the first time that the public is going to experience the full loop of the new and improved AI Arena game. In terms of like traction.
Let me just ask quick, is that
yeah.
the no code version or the code version?
The no code version. The no code version. We tested both of them in the previous version of the game. We're now just launching the no code version. We're going to launch the coded version probably, I don't want to commit to anything, but sometime around Q3 of next year, just because we want to build it out first with the no code version, get a lot more traction, get people pumped about this. So to the point where researchers recognize it and they're like, okay, this is like something cool to work on. You know what I mean? It's a lot easier to get interest from gamers than it is for researchers because they have so many interesting stuff they can dive into, especially now with like generative art, these large language models. We want to really get them excited about applying reinforcement learning to a really fun game.
Jay, I'll play you one-on-one. What do you think? Maybe
Let's
give
go.
us give like a week for us to train our fighters, maybe 1 week or something, and then we go
live on the show. Let's do it on the roll up next week.
Let's stream it on Twitch. I feel like we need to stream it on Twitch. Is that what gamers do these days?
I have no idea. I'm not a gamer, but I think so.
I love it. I love it. Oh yeah. Well, one thing I'll just mention about this beta is it's a closed beta. We're running like a mini tournament that there's gonna be 10 teams kind of competing against each other. It should be a lot of fun. And then after that, going into next year, we're going to focus a lot on rolling out a free-to-play version of the game, because we're essentially going to have an NFT gated version where they can actually earn tokens, and then a free-to-play version where they can basically aspire to get there, but eventually work their way up into the NFT gated version. And the free-to-play version is really important because we don't want people that are interested in learning about AI and playing the game to not have the opportunity solely because they don't have, for example, enough ETH to buy like an NFT. And so we want to really make it available to everyone, because we say it and we truly mean it, that we want to democratize AI. We want literally everybody on the earth to be able to have an understanding of this technology that's going to change the world.
It's amazing. Where you said it's in ETH, so I assume you're building in the Ethereum ecosystem. Can you talk about where you're building and why you've chosen that as well?
Yeah, sure. Well, we recognize the importance of network effects. And at the time of us kind of building it, Ethereum definitely had the largest network, and still today it does. Of course, the scaling issue is a bit of a problem. And so what we're doing is we're launching on Arbitrum. That's the L2 of our choice. We tested out a few scaling solutions, and Arbitrum happened to be sort of the best one. They have the most responsive devs. And so, so we're going to be deploying on Arbitrum. When we initially did the tests on Arbitrum, our community really liked it. It was like really quick transactions, and so we're and low gas fees. And so, that's where we're going to be building.
Interesting.
And so beta comes out next week. What's the phase after that? When will it be more open?
Yeah, so we're going to be doing a few closed betas. So we have a bunch of people that sort of applied. It was very oversubscribed, but we had to kind of narrow it down to 100 to like each of these betas. We might expand in the future betas to be like slightly larger and larger. But essentially, after we finish these betas, we're going to try and roll out a free-to-play version so that literally everybody can try it out.
Awesome. So before we get into our speed rounds, as we always do, I guess people can't play right now, even though it is live when they're listening to this. But if they can't play yet, what can they do? Can they follow you on Twitter? Go to your website? Is there anything they can do to try to get in on the next beta when it opens? Like where should people go that are interested?
Yeah, definitely. I would say head on over to our Twitter, our Discord. Our Discord's where all the action happens. That's where you can earn sort of like access into the following betas. So I would say join those two. And then in our Discord, we have a bunch of official links that you can click through our documentation to kind of read all about our project. We're going to be doing a few sort of like live streams of the competition as it's happening next week. So check us out there. And then, we're also going to be rolling out some tutorials so you can kind of see a walkthrough of the game and how it works.
Yeah, I think everybody should at least go to your Twitter and watch the beta that you guys have on your Twitter, because the game looks amazing. It's incredible. I can't wait to battle Kyle and take him down with shooting lightning bolts and all these different things that I saw in the game. It looks so
can't
fun.
wait to see
it. Okay, let's speed round here before we finish the show. I'll go first question. Brandon, we'll go to you first. What's an NFT you'll never sell?
My AI Arena NFT.
That was easy. Because you've trained it so much.
Yeah.
It'd be like selling your child.
You know what? That actually is the case. And I remember our previous beta, like people were pissed that we had to kind of like redeploy the contracts. They're like, what the hell? Love this thing.
No,
yeah. There's a different emotional connection there.
No doubt. Interesting.
Michael, what about you?
AI arena. That's our baby. I was the one that was pissed when I had to get rid of my one of the people that
He almost quit his job.
I trained up a guy named, we called it beast mode, and sort of it just watching it fight, and I know there's going to be someone out there that beats it, there's no doubt about it, but I got bragging rights for a week, so that's fun.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Favorite person to follow on Twitter? And if you can, maybe direct it towards somebody who's a leader in the AI space.
Oh yeah, for me, it's this guy named Christopher Olah. He used to work at Google Brain and OpenAI. He is absolutely phenomenal. He also used to lead this journal called the Distill Journal, which basically what they do is they create interactive sort of like machine learning articles. And that's actually what got me into web development, is because I was doing machine learning stuff and I was like, how do I like display this for the world to see like in a really cool way? And I saw his articles and it blew my mind, where you can just toggle a bunch of stuff and you can kind of see like how the different algorithms react. And it just, and that's part of the inspiration actually for the AI inspector, where we allow you to see into the mind of the AI. So definitely go check out Christopher Olah. He has extremely high quality content.
Michael, what about you?
Andrew Ning, which has some courses on deep learning neural nets, presents it in a very approachable way. I know that one of Brandon's core tenets is that if you can't explain something basically and to a 5-year-old, then you don't get it yourself. And I think that AI, contrary to popular belief, is something that can be presented and taught in a digestible way. And it just takes the people to present it that way. Yeah.
It's awesome. 2 great suggestions. Definitely going to share those and encourage our followers. We'll link to in the show notes to both of those gentlemen that you guys mentioned. Okay, last question. If you had a billboard that 1 billion people were going to see, what would you write on it?
You know what? I'll put my motto on there. My motto is, my machine doesn't learn unless I do.
Ooh, I like that. Nice.
That's
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
That's really good.
Appreciate it. Yeah, that's just because I'm all about sort of continuously learning. And in order to develop these better and better machine learning algorithms, you yourself have to understand the technology better in order to, whether it's like create a new loss function or stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I will put.
You know what? I asked Chat GPT or whatever. I just asked it as well. And its answer was kind of a cop-out. It goes, if I had a billboard that 1 billion people would see, I would use it to promote a message of kindness, compassion, and empathy. I would encourage people to be understanding and respectful of one another and to strive to make the world a better place for everyone. I would want to inspire people to be their best selves and to work together to create a future that is bright and full of hope. So very nice. But I want to know what it was going to say. Not tell me about it. I want to give me the word.
Yeah. How am I going to give an answer after that?
Yeah.
GPT doesn't know how big the billboard is either. This is the longest billboard ever.
Yeah, exactly.
Say like in 10 words. Do it in 10 words.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show and breaking down AI in such a simple to understand way. And also thanks for working on something that is so focused on onboarding more people to AI and Web3 and educating the masses. Really excited to play the game, really excited to beat Kyle, and really excited for everyone out there to try it. Yeah, really appreciate your time. It's been really enjoyable.
It's been a pleasure, guys. Thank you so much for having us.
It's our pleasure. Thanks so much for your time and all that you guys do for the space. Like, I've been following you guys for a while, so appreciate it. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Web3 Academy. We hope this helps you along your Web3 journey. And if it does, please share this episode and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Nothing in this podcast was financial advice. Crypto and Web3 can be risky. You can literally lose it all. In fact, if you invest on account of what we say, you probably will lose it all. So don't do that. In all honesty, the point of this podcast is to remove the noise of markets and price and focus on utility and implementation anyway. So you should not take any of this as financial advice. Thank you, friends, and see you in the next one.